Have you ever imported a photo into Lightroom and thought, wait, why does this look worse? You're not crazy and Lightroom's not broken. Let me show you exactly why this is happening and how to fix it. Right now you're seeing the back of my camera in playback. My camera was set up to shoot RAW plus JPEG, and I have set up a creative look for all the images. When you take a photo, your camera actually shows you a processed preview, even if you shoot RAW. That preview has contrast, color, sharpening all baked in. Even when you shoot exclusively RAW, your camera's LCD or electronic viewfinder displays a JPEG preview. This is because a RAW file is not actually a viewable image yet. It is unprocessed sensor data that must be developed into a visible format by a processor. Here's what your camera shows you and why. Your camera generates a small, temporary JPEG version of the photo to show you on the screen. This preview is what you see during playback and what your computer often shows as a thumbnail before it finishes loading the full raw data. This JPEG preview reflects your in-camera settings such as picture styles, portrait, landscape, etc., white balance, and contrast. These are settings baked into the preview you see on the screen, but are not applied to the actual raw data. On most cameras, the histogram you see is also calculated from this JPEG preview rather than the raw image itself. This can sometimes be misleading, as the JPEG might show clipped highlights that are still recoverable in the actual raw data. Sharpening and saturation. The camera often adds a bit of sharpening and saturation to the preview to make the image look better on the small, bright LCD. This is why photos sometimes look flatter or duller when you first open them in professional editing software like Adobe Lightroom. So now let's see what happens when you click on the first import button. I'm talking about the one in a library module. So what this does, I'm going to click on import because I want to import all these photos that I took from my camera to Lightroom. So clicking on the first import button is going to open the import dialog. And so what does Lightroom do at this moment? Nothing is imported yet. Lightroom is only looking at the source. So what are you seeing on the screen? Lightroom reads the storage device, camera, card, or folder, and it displays thumbnail for each file. So where did those thumbnails come from? RAW files, the embedded JPEG preview created by the camera that uses the creative look or the picture profile, white balance, and contrast, and JPEG files, the actual JPEG itself already baked in. So since I had set my camera up to shoot RAW plus JPEG, that is what you're seeing here in the import dialog, side by side, my RAW files and my JPEG files from the camera. So what Lightroom has not done yet, no files copied or moved, no development edits applied, no Lightroom previews built, no catalog entries created, no metadata written, and no color profile assigned. At this stage, Lightroom is only browsing. Think of this as a file browser with thumbnails. I'm still here in the import dialog, but before I press the other import button to do the actual import, sometimes during this import, you might see a flicker, or you might notice the image looks good for a second, then suddenly changes. That's Lightroom switching from the embedded camera preview to its own raw rendering. So now I'm going to click on the import button to actually do the import, and what happens immediately is Lightroom performs the actions you choose at the top, whether it be copy as DNG, copy, move, add. So here's step by step what Lightroom does. You have file handling, copies or references the files, writes them to a chosen destination, does a catalog registration, adds each photo to the Lightroom catalog. It will do a preview generation, builds Lightroom previews, based on what your settings were. Mine was minimal. The embedded JPEG preview is replaced by a Lightroom rendered preview. The raw interpretation begins. Lightroom now applies a default color profile, usually Adobe color or custom default you set, and you have the optional options. These only happen if enabled in the import dialog, like development presets, which I have none, metadata presets, I have none, keywords, or file renaming, and I do none of that. Preview appearance may change. This is when people notice contrast drop, color shift, washed out look, because Lightroom is no longer showing the camera JPEG. So what is still not happening, even after import? The original file is untouched. No baked-in camera settings are applied to raw pixels. Lightroom has not altered the image itself. All changes live as instructions in the catalog. So now that the images from my camera are imported, I'm in the development module, and you can see in Lightroom where it says profile, it says Adobe Color. So that is the Adobe profile by default, but this does not match your camera's look. So if I scroll down, I'm going to browse all of the profiles. So here's my raw image, and here is my JPEG image. So again, I can click on my raw image, and you can see Adobe Color has been applied. Why all this is happening in the first place, the mismatch happens because Adobe Color is Adobe's own secret sauce interpretation of your raw data. To get the look you saw on your calendar's LCD, you need to switch to camera matching profiles, which are designed to approximate the manufacturer's styles, like Fuji's film simulations, Nikon picture controls, or Sony's creative styles. I took this with a Sony camera. Under camera matching, there's 9, and I'm just kind of sliding over each of these profiles. And the one that I used is this one here. That's the profile I chose in my camera. That's the creative look I had applied. So back to the raw file. So why do raw files look flat? Well, raw files are meant to be flat. That's not a problem. It's actually the advantage. Flat means more highlight detail, more shadow detail, more editing flexibility. Lightroom expects you to finish the image. That flat look is actually a massive dynamic range advantage. Because the camera isn't baking in contrast or saturation, you're left with a digital negative that preserves maximum detail in both the highlights and shadows. Think of a JPEG as a finished meal, while a RAW file is a kitchen full of high-end ingredients. You have the flexibility to recover highlights that would otherwise be blown out, adjust white balance perfectly after the fact without degrading the image, control the tone curve rather than letting the camera's processor make those creative decisions for you. So now, what is the fix for all this? Here's how to stop being surprised every time you import photos. How to get your camera's look. So there is a manual switch. In the development module, go to the basic panel and click the profile browser icon, the 4 small squares. I've expanded the camera matching section, and these are the profiles specifically for your camera model. So it's camera VV is the profile I used in my camera, and I just click that, and I've applied it to that photo. I can select as many photos here and apply that camera profile to. But this is how you would do it if you've already imported in your photos. So now let's see how you automate this on import. Let's actually go through the fix. Again, come up to Lightroom Classic menu, under Preferences, under the Presets tab, under Raw Defaults, under Global, select Camera Settings. Close that. Now I'm going to hit Import and select my source. Basically I have the first import going on, nothing really going on in Lightroom, just browsing the camera. And here's another import to actually import it into Lightroom. Okay, all the files are imported in, and you saw a little bit of the flicker there as it came in. Here's my raw image on the left and my JPEG on the right. Select that raw image and go in the development module, and you see the profile is now camera VW. In my Sony camera, that's the creative look. So that profile information came across from my camera, and then when I said camera settings in my preferences, it knew and applied it. There they are side by side, my JPEG and my raw image. Actually, my raw image here on the left, my JPEG on the right. So now that doesn't mean I'm done with this editing, but it's pretty close to the way it looked in the camera, the way I saw at the back of the LCD. Important notes, these camera settings are camera profiles that I'm showing you for import. These are for raw files only. For JPEGs, the look is already permanently baked in by the camera, and changing any of these settings won't automatically update photos you've already imported. You'll need to batch update those manually using AutoSync. And just to make sure, before you do any imports, and if you want to see the photos as close as they are to what your camera LCD shows, check one thing where you actually import. Make sure under Apply during import, Develop Settings says None. That way you know for sure. If this is set and you forget about it, Lightroom may be changing your photos without you realizing it. So no, Lightroom isn't ruining your photos. It's just showing you the truth and giving you full control. If this tutorial helped, hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss future Photoshop tutorials. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. Remember, it's never too late to learn. Thanks for watching.